On to another episode of That Final Scene. My name is Sophie, and joining me as always are Ben and Simon. Hi, guys. It's been
Hello.
a while.
Hello, yeah.
How are you doing?
Good, yeah, good. I've been watching quite a lot, so I'm interested to chat.
Oh, can't wait. Okay, well, today we are very excited and very much looking forward to chatting with Dr. Dario Llinares, a fellow Substacker and now a friend who's been, exploring the crossroads of cinema and tech for a while now, but also is in a bit of a quest, just like us, to figure out how we bring people back to the cinemas. Dario, welcome. So good to have you.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. I've been listening to you for a little while now, and yeah, enjoying the kind of reactions to the Oscars with agreement and rage in equal measure, depending on what you say, obviously.
Amazing. Justice for Demi, but also, we love Mike. We love the winner, don't we, Ben?
I mean, I said Mikey Madison, so I
You
know
did.
I know everybody wanted to me to win it, but I said Mikey, and I'm very, very happy with my call on that one.
You did call it, and I'm very happy for her. Well,
And it's like her birthday today, I think, or yesterday.
oh,
I feel like I saw something on Instagram that it's her birthday, so
well,
there you
happy
go.
birthday, Mikey, wherever
Yeah.
you are. Dario, would you mind starting us off by sharing a bit about who you are, where you're at in life at the moment? I don't like asking people what do they do, and also, yeah, how you ended up on Substack as well.
Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question
Yeah.
in terms of where am I in life. Well, I've got an academic background. I did film studies PhD, which I completed sort of early 2010s, 2011. I think I've finished it, if I can remember rightly now. Feels a long time ago now. And I worked down at Falmouth University for a while, then went up to Brighton and then to London. And then around 2015, I started the Cinematologist podcast with Neil Fox. And we've been doing that for, well, we're coming up to 10 years now. And that was kind of a little bit of a response to our dissatisfaction with the way that university film education and sort of university life more broadly was becoming much more administrative and managerial, and the sort of spaces for research and the kind of conversations we wanted to have weren't happening. And then this new kind of medium arrived, which was podcasting, and I just found it really interesting and inspired me to kind of think about my own position and the mode with which I kind of articulated myself as an academic. And I moved into kind of creative practice, so actually making the podcast and editing and sort of self-taught myself all of that stuff, and then kind of got more into the video side as well. Started making video essays, and I mean we'll talk about it later on. The sort of the impact of AI is interesting to me in an ambivalent sense. I see the pros and the cons of it. I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. And yeah, I mean, interestingly, it came full circle when last summer when I essentially quit my academic job with no other job to go to in a fit of middle-age crisis. And I'm kind of still figuring it out, if I'm being honest. I'm applying for jobs in different sectors. I'm doing a little bit of work still in academia, doing some editing and montage teaching, a sort of theory practice combination type stuff. And yeah, trying to grow the Substack, and I'm intending to sort of start to put my lectures, which I've got thousands of on my hard drive, onto Substack in a way that I think is kind of digestible. Yeah, I mean, just to sort of finish off you guys, I don't know how much you know about the sort of contraction of higher education more broadly, particularly in the arts and humanities. So I think there is still a lot of interest in arts and humanities based subjects, whether it's film studies, or literary studies, or whatever it might be in that sector. So I think there's going to be lots of people who are looking for places to engage with that and produce that going forward. So it's going to be an interesting next few years in kind of the academic adjacent analysis and distribution of, I don't want to call it content, but education in that sense.
Well, it's clear that you've been on the, what we call creators these days. You've been on that creator journey for a very long time. So yeah, it definitely sets the stage for some of the conversation we're gonna have today. So thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction. Now, just because we have a lot of to cover, and Ben has been watching a lot of things. Ben, I'm gonna kick off with you. What have you been watching?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of things to talk about, and I guess I want to get everybody's opinion on this if I can. But essentially, I have like two gripes with two things I've seen in like the last month. First is Mickey 17, which I saw. I think I saw that pretty soon after we recorded, because when we recorded with Gabriel, he'd just seen it in Berlin, and so I went to see it. I think maybe the weekend after we recorded, and then also the new Daredevil Born Again series on Disney Plus, and it's weird in seeing them both. I've realized I have the exact same issue with both of them, and maybe this is just a me issue. And actually, I think this maybe opens up an interesting conversation if we're talking later on about how you get people back into the cinema. The biggest issue, and not that I don't think both of them seem tremendously well made. I think Daredevil is maybe piggybacking a little bit on the Netflix show. I don't think it's as good. Last two episodes excluded from that, I've kind of enjoyed those. I am sick of the Trump bad guy. Because Mickey 17, Mark Ruffalo's playing the Trump bad guy. In the Daredevil program, Vincent D'Onofrio's playing the Trump bad guy, like to a crazy extent. Like he even does, like in the first couple of episodes, he even does like the hands thing, the Trump like hands thing. And I was like really struggling with it because I love science fiction, I love comic books. And so both of those things, like Mickey 17 and Daredevil, should be two things that I'm going into being like, yeah, like I'm really looking forward to this. And you go into it and it's just like there is no escapism in that kind of form of storytelling, because it's just like holding the mirror up and it's like, yeah, but the problem is that like, and it's interesting when you listen to comedians and stuff talk about Trump and politicians now, because they got, well, like the problem is that like you can't lampoon the guy, because as soon as you do make a joke about him, something has just happened. And it's like, you can parody him in films, but like we're also really fresh into it. Like this is like the next 4 years, especially for people in America. Like it must be really, like I'd love to know what people like in the States feel about kind of watching these TV shows, because especially comic books, like, and Marvel traditionally don't like make that, like, I don't know, that in your face a political statement. And maybe it's because they filmed it before he won, right? Like that could be it. But I felt kind of let down by both of them going into them thinking, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing this. And then just be like, fuck, like, God, coming out of it just so depressed, because it's like, well, like escapism and what movies and cinema can be. I was like, fuck me, I'm just sick of seeing the Trump bad guy. Like it feels so done as like a trope in movies, and it's, I don't know. Mickey 17 is interesting and it's good. Like I think from a Bong Joon-ho perspective, it's good. I think Gabriel said he'd put it over Snowpiercer. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but I would actually say I preferred Snowpiercer, I think. But yeah, I was just really, I've just been disappointed in both, that I'm kind of like, oh, there should be some escapism in this, but there isn't, because the two main like bad guys in both of those are essentially the world's bad guy right now.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm making statements that people will be listening to the podcast thinking, fuck you, but it is what it is. I don't know. Have you guys seen Mickey 17, or are you watching Daredevil?
Neither.
I think you'd like Mickey 17. I think I'd be interested to know what you think, because like Bong Joon-ho is good and like there is some interesting stuff in it, but I don't know what Dario, Sophie, what you guys thought.
Yeah, what did you think, Dario?
Oh, I haven't seen the TV show, but I've seen Mickey 17, and yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying about that, but yeah, it's kind of going to happen. You know what I mean? I suppose if it's done with something, resembling, I don't know, they do something interesting with that. I suppose it's still okay, because there's always a bogeyman, isn't there, in any given historical context. But yeah, I don't think it is done particularly interesting. I don't know. Like Mark Ruffalo is somebody who I kind of. It's very rare that I see him in something where I'm kind of, oh, wow, Mark Ruffalo, great. You know what I mean? It's kind of like he kind of does a thing, I think.
Yeah.
And it's it's the grandstanding, isn't it? I mean, he's taken this to like 11, but even in his drama roles, there's always that moment where he does the Mark Ruffalo speach.
Well, in Poor Things, he's essentially that was the MS Stone, wasn't it? Yeah. It's basically the same character, but just like dialed up a little bit. It's kind of weird.
I think that's so.
Did Toni Collette not save it?
I think she was good, but I I don't think the writing served her in any way. What I felt coming out of that film, and I think I briefly talked about it on Substack, is to me it felt like another Don't Look Up, and I really hated Don't Look Up. It was just better, like it was much, like obviously it was better acted, generally, Ruffalo aside, and it had some interesting things to say more around the clonification of it all. Like I think that part was a bit more interesting, and Pattinson was amazing, but ultimately it didn't offer any insightful critique into the Trumpism era. Like it just said the same old stuff.
It was like a hollow vessel for like this kind of other story that he was trying to tell, and it just didn't really. Yeah. As you say, Sophie, I think so. Like the writing is just a bit like it's just a bit
flat.
off. Yeah, it's a bit flat.
Yeah. There's no satire or critique to the extent of what Parasite did a few years ago. It was just not there. So one of those films where I had a good time, but I wouldn't watch them again.
Yeah, I wouldn't rush back to it. I mean,
it's weird because it's kind of identityless considering how much stuff is going on in the film. Yeah. And like you say, I just don't. It doesn't quite know what it is. You know what I mean? Is it going to be this escapist satire? Is it going to be something that's more profound and philosophical about the double? Which obviously we've kind of seen in The Substance, and millions of other films have done the doppelganger thing. But yeah, I mean, I was probably less on it than you guys. I didn't think.
I think as well. Like, I think he's done that before. Like, Parasite's an interesting one, right? Because Parasite it changes as a film, right? Like, it kind of moves around from satire to like kind of like almost horror elements to it. And he's trying to do the same thing in Mickey 17, but it just doesn't click. And maybe that's a science fiction issue because when you're in these like bizarre worlds, like unless you have a really steady foundation, it's kind of harder to do that. But yeah, I don't know. It just fell flat for me. And the same with Daredevil's Falling. I don't know. Sophie, I feel like you've been. Did I see you posting about it on the Instagram?
Yeah, it was the first few episodes. I haven't caught up yet. Yeah, same thing. I don't see anything interesting, but Vincent is so good. I'm like, you know what? You could read a cereal box to me, and I would be fine with it. So it's like...
You know what? Weirdly, he's my hangover from the Netflix one. I actually didn't like the Kingpin in the Netflix show either. I was kind of like when they were bringing it back on Disney, and it was him coming back in. I was like, oh god.
You mean the character, not the performance? Yeah. That's fair. I mean, it's kind of done.
Yeah. And also, sorry. Okay, so here's the other one. Who's watching White Lotus? Dare I ask?
Me.
Simon and Dario aren't. Oh,
you guys are
Sophie,
not.
Sophie, maybe you and I need to have a private chat about this.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a fucking TV show.
I mean, I'm not enjoying this season. But
can I ask, Sai or Dario, have you watched either of the first two seasons?
Nope.
Yeah,
I watched one episode.
Really, Simon? I feel like White Lotus is like your kind of TV show.
I think so.
I wasn't sure.
Oh, okay, interesting. I feel like it will be. I mean, the first two seasons will be, and this third season is just like
TV has to be a real commitment for me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very specific decision to watch a long TV show.
I've been recommended Adolescence by enough people now that I've gone over the hill and I'm going to do it. But
Dario, did you watch it?
Any old thing.
Yeah. Adolescence is great. Okay. Adolescence is really, really good. I mean, I interviewed the director when he did Boiling Point.
Did you?
Oh, wow.
And because that film, because I have a history before I became an academic in restaurants, and it's the closest thing I've seen to an authentic British context of a it's like The Bear is very good. I like that as well, but from a British standpoint, it's absolutely superb, and all of the characters rung true for me in that sense. And this, obviously, it takes that stylistic approach with the one shot, but each episode is kind of like a slightly different genre. You've got the kind of police action thing at the beginning, and then you've got the interrogation in the first episode. Then they go into the schools, which is like, I don't have any kids, and I found that terrifying. Then you've got the sort of psychological kind of faux horror movie in the third one, and then the fourth becomes like a family drama.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, I'll tell you about my. I've got one caveat to it, but I'll let you guys go ahead. Say what you thought.
No.
I mean, I thought it was amazing. I particularly love that third episode, the two-hander.
Same.
Which kind of got me thinking about, like, I don't know if it's not that it's exactly like this, but I think there's a lot to be said for like like 3 or 4 person episodes. And did you guys ever watch Psychoville, the kind of the League of Gentlemen style program? So it was like Mark Gatiss and the guys who did League of Gentlemen. It's this weird kind of like horror, like British horror comedy. And there's a brilliant episode, I think, in the second season where it's Mark Gatiss and there's 2 characters in it. It's a mother and son, and the son is a serial killer, and the mother just kind of is like kind of trundling along and making sure he doesn't get caught. And it's essentially Mark Gatiss and them 2, and the whole episode is just done in an apartment. And it really reminded me of that, of how like some of the best stuff you can do is like just so minimalist, and like you don't get that. Like casts are huge now, and you very rarely get these like minimalist kind of movies or TV shows. I'll dig out the episode and I'll let you guys know what it is. But I would recommend even just watching that episode in isolation, because it really kind of reminded me of that third episode where it's essentially just the psychologist and the child, which is just insane.
Yeah, I was moved so deeply by that show. I feel like I don't have quite the right words to express my thoughts on it. Like it's very hard. Like I almost want to go away and think about it for a while. But the one thing that struck me right away after I finished it, especially maybe with the 4th episode, is the tremendous empathy involved in making that film. In that show, because it would have been so easy to shift blame or talk about toxic masculinity in like very shallow terms. And it showed so much empathy for the classmates, for the therapist, for the kid, for the family, in such a profound way that I don't know how it doesn't touch someone's heart when they see it.
It does a really good job at not pointing the finger. Funnily
Absolutely.
enough, me and Ellie were chatting about this, having dinner like before we started recording. But like, it does a really, like, it is very much just like holding up the mirror type thing. You know, it's not pointing the finger of blame at anyone. It's just kind of like educational in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be interested to see what you think of it. Like, but I will say, like, it is a tough watch. Like, we watched like 2 episodes at a time, and the whole single shot thing, you have to be paying attention. Like I like, make sure you've got some like free time to watch it, because you really have to lock into it, because you have to be watching like everything that's going on, and like it's like a tiring watch in a way. Like I don't think we watched 2 in a row, and I don't think I could have watched like a third and fourth. You almost need a break in between.
Dario, what's your caveat about it?
Well, I've read a couple of pieces, and I kind of see this where and particularly from female critics who have said the problem with it is it's another example of the focus is on the male experience, and the female victim is just a silenced non-voice in a sense. And I was thinking, if they'd have had a 5th episode that then could kind of explain or explore the other side of that, maybe through the parents of the girl who found, who found some, memory of why she was behaving the way she was. And there's a sort of an implication that she kind of drove him to it a little bit, and I mean, I can see that sense of unease. That again, it kind of, it's like that thing where you say, where in the news, if there's been a case of rape or sexual assault, and somebody says, well, the girl shouldn't have been walking there, rather than saying, no, you should be able to walk wherever you want without getting attacked. You know what I mean? That kind of argument, I think, has been leveled against it. But fair. I mean, it's an interesting sort of observation.
It'd be interesting to, as you say, like a 5th episode. You'd almost will be, maybe not even the girl's family, but the friend from the 2nd episode, who we get a very short but like really kind of like heightened emotions out of. And it almost, the way that that episode ends, tracking her, and then the camera obviously does that amazing kind of flying shot. I almost felt like, well, we'll get a like 3rd or 4th episode, she'll play a part in it, but actually we kind of go away from all of that immediately. You almost could plop one in there like after the 2nd or even after the 4th, before that final episode. Yeah. To like just invest, as you say, like kind of tell that side of the story a bit more. I will say I did think it ran out of steam in the final episode a little bit. If I was to level a critique at it, I did think that final episode dragged a little bit. I think the ending's great, But in getting to it, as I say, like, because it is a bit of a slog of a watch, I did feel like kind of by the end of it, I was like, incredible ending, but also, oh, Jesus, okay, I'm kind of like, we're there now, you know? I will say, actually, can I just point out as well, in to move away from movies, actually, for a second, which probably shouldn't do. I forced myself to finish The Last of Us Part 2, the game, in anticipation of the second season of the TV show coming out next month. And I will say, if it is even half of as good as the game is, we are in for a fucking amazing series of television. It's going to be so good. I was like, I finished it, and Ellie got into bed, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah. I think I need like 5-10 minutes to just like process that," because it was just like, I was like stunned by it. It was that good. But yeah, sorry. Have you been watching anything? Sorry, I hijacked that there.
Have I been watching anything? I watched Real Pain, actually.
Oh,
what did you think?
a light comedy.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I found it quite moving, actually.
I was gonna, yeah, that was sarcasm. Sorry.
There's something for everyone in it, but it had the whole coach trip kind of humor of like a load of randoms on a trip together, and all the characters that always pop up on those types of trips. But yeah, I thought it was excellent. Imagine reading that script. And being able to turn it into that level of chemistry and comedy. I just thought probably the script itself probably didn't look like that much, but what they did with it, I thought was really impressive. Like there's the moment when they get to that memorial statue thing, and what's he called, Benji, sort of whips them all up to get involved in the photo shoot. And like I was putting myself in that. Have you seen this, Dario?
I have,
Real Pain?
Yeah.
And so in that scene, I was thinking like, oh, I'd have been like cringing. I'd have been like, oh, it's a bit distasteful. But it just shows like how his energy could like kind of galvanize them all and get them to become vulnerable. And I thought that was just a really powerful moment in the film that kind of set it on a really good course. And I just enjoyed the humor of it, and the flawed nature of all the characters came across really well. So yeah,
and
quite a nice human story.
And also your favorite type of film, 90 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I actually think it's like obviously amazing that Kieran Culkin won the Oscar
for it again.
He won Best Supporting Actor for it. Yeah.
Okay.
But I almost think I think we're all people are doing a bit of a.
Who's the main actor then? If he's supporting?
Yeah, I mean,
Jesse Eisenberg, I guess, but
okay.
Category fraud.
It's doing a disservice to it, though, right? Because I also think like the whole cast in the film is great. Like I think it's like one of the Jesse Eisenberg's best performances. Like I thought he was amazing, but also like it's I know what was it, Anora won casting, but like a Real Pain as well. Like as you say, Simon, like to get all those actors and like they gel and they galvanize really well together, from like the tour guide to the guy who's converted to Judaism to like the older couple and stuff like that. That's a really hard mix to get right, especially with like such sensitive subject matter. Like you say, like, it could have been so cringy, like that scene as well.
Yeah,
but actually,
hats off to Jesse Eisenberg for being able to communicate his vision to the cast and then get those performances and make it all work. Like he must have had to get them to really buy in and really understand his vision for the film for that to all come together.
Yeah.
Like it could have failed on so many points so easily, especially given the sort of sensitive nature of the journey they were on. So yeah, I thought it was brilliant. Give it a good 8 out of 10.
Nice.
Amazing. Dario, any other film or TV recommendations or anything else you've been watching recently?
Well, you had on the list Black Bag, which I saw.
Oh, well, I said I was gonna watch it and then I didn't. So
right, okay.
Would love your review. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really liked it. It's, I mean, if you wanted your entertainment, your throwaway sort of spy thriller that I mean, it's one of those films where you if you're a Soderbergh fan, and I am, that you understand that you're in the hands of somebody who knows exactly what they're doing, and they're mining different genres and mining scenarios which you've seen before, but placing them in a way where it's for maximum impact and entertainment. You know what I mean? And yeah, Fassbender and Cate Blanchett are just effortlessly cool, and it's kind of psychological at the same time. So it's sort of got nods to Bond, but it's much more knowing and arched even than say something like Slow Horses. So yeah, I really kind of enjoyed it. I think the one caveat I had is I seem to see seen a lot of movies in a row where it was like, okay, so is that it? That's just kind of it, really? And maybe I sort of just sort of sat back and just enjoyed it for what it was, because it is kind of him just doing that thing where it's not a film that is, you know, one of his deeply profound ones, and it's saying something about the essence of cinema, you know, something like that. It is just a kind of somebody playing the notes of genre in a really beautifully done way.
I think we need more films like this. I mean, we're gonna get to it. Maybe we should just jump right into it. But I think we need more films that are just that, like pure entertainment. Not everything has to be like life-changing cinema in a way. And also,
100%.
right, Dario, I'm guessing. I think it's also like a 90-minute film.
Yeah,
right?
it's short.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah,
Sai, this is perfect for you.
Check it. It's hangover material.
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
I'll put it onto that list.
And it's also kind of like a bit about, you know, workplace animosity and kind of petty grievances, but then, you know, that you end up trying to kill each other because of it. It's that kind of thing, you know.
Escalation.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. I think I'm gonna have to watch it this week. It sounds I miss Fassbender, you guys. Like, we just have to have more Fassbender this year.
the killer wasn't great.
Also,
So we
It
need
wasn't.
something.
in that?
It wasn't.
Yes, Pierce Brosnan is in it. Yeah.
How is
Yeah.
he in it? Is he good?
He's funny because he's kind of like the overarching boss, the sort of M character. So he's kind of now got so old. But to be honest, that's the one thing. He's slightly underwritten in that role. It's the one problem with the film, I think, that sometimes when you do have these entertainment first, stylistic first movies, the plot introduces kind of elements just to move things along, and you're like, oh, okay, I've seen what you've done there, just to get things going. It's kind of, he comes in at a moment where you're like, well, he kind of should have been in it earlier. If now he's this big thing, kind of, you know, puppet master over everything.
What voice
I
is he
will
doing?
say-
What accent is he doing?
No, he's just doing what he's normally doing
himself.
Pierce, yeah.
I will say, if you want to laugh, go and watch the trailer for the new Guy Ritchie TV show called Mobland. It's Tom Hardy and Pierce Brosnan is in it. And somehow, as an Irishman, Pierce Brosnan can't do an Irish accent, which is just it's
so weird.
watch the trailer though. Like it's bizarre when he speaks. Like it sounds so put on. It's crazy.
Where
It's
does
like
he live? Does he live in America?
I think he lives in like Hawaii or something. I follow him on Instagram.
Maybe that's why.
I follow him on Instagram. He essentially just posts like all this stuff like around palm trees, and he's always painting. It's like he lives an amazing
It's like
life.
International Irish or something, isn't it? It's like a mixture of.
Well, he's been like out of Ireland for so long. I mean, he probably left in like the 80s or something, whenever he started doing Remington Steel,
Yeah.
like a long time ago.
Why
At least
is it like
Fassbender
this?
hasn't lost the accent when you hear him speak.
Yeah, that's strange. But also, why is Brosnan like? I don't understand how he can do his own accent wrong. It just makes no sense to me.
I think Fassbender's just a better actor.
Do you think Pierce Brosnan watched Ian McShane's career go down the kind of gangster route, and he's like, oh, a bit of that.
Yeah.
Well, I
Getting
think
the
he's
kind of the marks on my face, looking a bit, wizened and
Yeah.
gangstery.
No, but he looks. It's weird because, you know, Pierce Brosnan, he's so good looking, kind of back in the Bond days. It's weird now because he does look weathered, but not in a way that like not in an Ian McShane kind of, you know, this works kind of way. It's like, oh God, Pierce, you need to sit down and you know, and he lives in Hawaii, so
I
he
watched
should be
this
all right.
dreadful Did you watch? Is it called The Agency that I was saying I didn't enjoy?
Yes,
It has
yeah.
That's-
Richard Gere in it, and he's
Yeah.
freaking ancient in that.
That's a Fassbender. Fassbender's in that as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
The Agency.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think.
he's spying
Forgetting
himself.
about.
Yeah, he's like spied out. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen
Maybe
that. I'll
listen,
have to
they're
check
looking
that
for
out.
a Bond. Maybe he's doing a public audition for it.
Or maybe a villain. He would be great.
He would be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Oh, he would be really good.
Yeah.
He's too old for Bond now. Actually,
Yeah.
in this movie, you could see he's aged as
Yeah.
well. You know.
Wait, what's the Bond age range though? It's quite wide, isn't it? Because wasn't like some of the actors are pretty ancient.
Oh God,
The one.
yeah.
I mean,
Well,
Craig
back
just
in the
finished, and
day.
he's in his 50s now, and Fassbender's
Mo-
probably pretty close to Daniel Craig's age.
Moore was 63 or something when he did his last one,
Wow.
amazingly. But Cruise is you know, still
Like, that's
running
true.
about at 60 odd.
He'll be on his
Yeah.
Zimmer frames, cracking out those.
Yeah, like a flying wheelchair. That'll be the next thing from Q Branch. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to there's not a right segue for this, so I'm just gonna jump right into it because I would love to spend some time talking about cinemas really, but let me set the scene a little bit. So I want to get to a quote that I wrote from your Substack, Dario. But essentially, we have a couple of things, right? We have the streaming dominating how most people consume films today. We have cinemas that are closing at alarming rates, and I've been looking at the numbers; they're not looking good. So yeah, we really wanted to carve out some time to really discuss what we might be losing, and also what we could potentially gain by rethinking and reimagining the cinema experience. So, Dario, in one of your recent Substack pieces, you mentioned, and I noted this down, you mentioned walking to the Curzon Bloomsbury in some unseasonably idyllic sunshine. And I found that so romantic and so interesting because it made me think about, how getting to the cinema is such a physical experience by itself. So do you think that the journey to the theater, like that time before you even sit down, actually affects how we experience a film?
Well, 100% for me, anyway. I've gone past that idea that you book your film and you go and you turn up and you stand in line and you sit down. And it's almost as if everything is building up to the film. For me, there is a sense in which my physical experience is attuned to the idea that the film is part of a kind of context of watching. So even in the selection of the movie, why am I watching this movie? What's it for? I mean, the podcast has kind of structured that for years now in terms of there are films that I'll watch for the podcast and films that I don't. And then, if I'm going with my partner or I'm going with friends, they have a kind of context to them. As we discussed when we spoke previously, Sophie, the going alone is a big thing for me. And I like to have a lot of time before the film and time afterwards, if possible. I mean, obviously, if it's a late one, then you just go home. But I think it's interesting to me is you can't divorce the many kind of elements of the kind of metatextual part of going to the cinema. All of the paraphernalia around it has to have some impact on your screening experience. And then when you get in there, who is in there? Is it noisy? Are people annoying you? Has the film actually grabbed everybody in a way that you can palpably tell that everybody's in on this film? Are people walking out? All of these little things have huge are part of the kind of circumstance of your reaction to what the film is doing to you. I don't think, I mean, as much as we might like to think that the auditorium experience, so the darkened room, all pointing in the same direction, we've got the screen which we focus on because we're not supposed to get our phones out, obviously. That then kind of transfers the image into our brain without any kind of mediatory element to it. But I think just us as embodied human subjects, we can't not be kind of physically in resonance with what we're seeing in various ways. And then, as I say, the sort of social element to that all have an impact, I think.
Yeah, and I think the current experience that is being offered now is not like what I call like bookmarked in a way. So there's no like the experience right now doesn't offer you before and after that is actually quite appealing. Like it almost feels like the moment you're done with the film, they want you out as soon as possible, as opposed to like finding a space, a physical space that you can, debrief and you can connect with one another. So I find that is quite lucky, and I think the plays that are doing quite well offer something to that extent, whether it's before or after watching a film. Simon, like did you watch A Real Pain at home or
yeah, but I paid
cinema?
the expensive Apple TV to watch it early price. But I completely agree with what you're saying. Like I find it quite magical. Like I sometimes go to the cinema in Wood Green, which is kind of like a 20-minute walk, and I like going to the late showings and walking down the high street like late at night on my own, just with some music on or whatever. I find that definitely adds to the flavour of it. However, whenever I get to the cinema these days, it's empty. Like, I don't know if I'm just being like nostalgic for the good old days, but like when I was a kid and you go to the cinema and the whole cinema would be excited for what they're about to see. It was like throbbing, it's like, even if it was a fairly crap comedy, there's something in that feeling of being with a bunch of people sitting all civilized together, enjoying the same content. And also kind of, it's that check, isn't it? Of like, I'm laughing, they're laughing, we're the same, we find the same stuff funny. I'm with these people.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really warm and connecting about that. And I haven't had that experience for ages.
It's funny because I think that the more we have a kind of era of tentpole, blockbuster comic book type stuff, the less event cinema seems relevant. I mean, I remember when I went to see when Daniel Craig did Bond for the first time, and I went in with on the Friday night when it first came out, absolutely packed audience, and there was palpable electricity in the auditorium, just like, what is this going to be like? And then I've had other experiences like that throughout my life in various ways, but I think they're much fewer and far between now, possibly because of the availability, possibly through streaming, possibly because of the way that the window has shortened, so people don't wait anymore, and lots of other reasons, like, for example, now we're given so much information about a film before we go and see it. There isn't that sort of sense of mystery, I think, in the same way of turning up to something with having absolutely no knowledge apart from maybe the star and the genre and that kind of thing.
I think the last time I went to the cinema and it was full was probably with Simon when we went to see Oppenheimer, and that's what like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And what's interesting thinking about that is having rewatched the film like at home on TV. I remember when we saw that, and it gave the film more gravitas in that the scene when they drop the bomb and everything goes silent. And we were in the IMAX in Leicester Square, that this room of hundreds of people, you could hear a pin drop. I think somebody might have like farted or something. So, like I have this weird recollection that like there was a noise, but like
it was tempting.
Yeah, but like that also just adds to the like experience of like that sense of the crowd. It's like being at a play, right? Like, or with a comedy as well. Like the laughing, you laugh more when other people laugh. Like even in a big crowd, like it builds the tension even more because you can like feel it in the room. And Oppenheimer, and other than maybe some like midnight screenings of movies where like that's where you're going, and like the key, like the people going to midnight screenings are the fans. Other than that, it's like I really struggled. Like the last, like Mickey 17, I'd say there was maybe like 6 or 7 other people in the cinema, and I was in like I was in the Finsbury Park Picture House in their main screen, and it was like empty. The closest I've gotten to full was Paddington 3.
Yeah, I went to see Nosferatu the other night, or a few weeks ago, and it was almost like the emptiness of the cinema added to the eeriness of the cinema.
Yeah,
which is not really what I was after, but yeah, it was just a bit depressing, really.
I think sorry, go ahead, Sophie.
Oh, no, go ahead, because I was
No,
going to...
I was just going to quickly say as well, though, that I'm very much against this kind of separation between films that you must see in the cinema and films that you kind of don't need to.
Yeah.
I'm of the view that still the ideal is to see everything in the cinema, if you want the full experience. I mean, I remember when I was at university doing film studies, within the first week, our professor got up and kind of basically said, if you don't see a film in the auditorium, it's like reading a book with pages missing. Now, that might be kind of overdoing it a little bit, but the sentiment was, even back in 99, when I first did my undergrad, there was this ideal that the auditorium experience possessed.
One of my biggest regrets in cinema is I didn't see Inception in the cinema. I only saw it when it came out, and I remember watching it being like, fucking hell, I wish like it was this massive screen. So I mean, Nolan's very good at it, and I think there's I didn't necessarily agree with his attitude during COVID and the whole Tenet thing about saving cinema, but he is certainly a director who he is if proof we need be for like movies are made for the big screen, even like A Real Pain, right? Like having that, I saw that in the cinema, and just again having that connection with the audience of like, it's an emotional experience that very rarely you get, that we're all going through this at the same time.
I think the only cure for it is to just release less guff. Like there's just so much material being released every month, on streaming services and into the cinema, and people just are saturated with choice. So there's nothing special about it anymore. You're just like, oh, can I fit in, and can I give another bit of my soul to some more content? It's not a treat anymore.
Yeah.
People
Would
just
you
have
say
access to everything all the time.
Would you say that this is what's not working right now? It's the convenience trumps everything.
Yeah, it's the kind of misnomer that having abundance of something is good, because I think humans like actually crave rarity in some ways. It makes things more special. And once you can just like turn on Netflix or whatever the service is and just have anything you want whenever you want, the entire magic of it is potentially damaged.
Yeah.
I've got a theory.
Anticipation.
Yeah. But I've got a theory as well that we are much less, this is going to sound really snobby, but we're much less educated in the specifics of form. And what I mean by that is, you take an example of a film that was out, I think it was last year, like Gladiator 2, right? And the kind of spectacle of enormity combined with absolute mess that film is exactly the problem with a lot of contemporary movie making. Now, again, I'm gonna go to quite highbrow, but we're doing an episode on Polish cinema for the Kinoteka, because the film festival is on now. But one of the key filmmaker we're looking at is a guy called Wojciech Haas, and he makes these films that are kind of like a combination of Louis Buñuel and Tarkovsky, and they are absolutely masterpieces in the combination of production design and cinematography. So there's no special effects. Everything is blocked out perfectly. And I was just watching, because we've got all the films beforehand, and this was just on my TV at home. I was watching this film that he made, probably his most famous one, called The Hourglass Sanatorium. And the first 20 minutes is like a masterpiece in placement and movement of the camera. It's better than anything that I've seen recently, including all of the and it's just cinema. I mean, I was talking to Neil about this. It's like that thing. I recognize it when I see it. That is cinema. And a lot of the stuff is just that we see today is just visual effects and quick cutting, intensified cutting that is like flashing lights meant to distract us, really. And I'm sorry to sort of be that's quite
substance.
Yeah, but to the nth degree in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I also think there should be more films like Black Bag playing all the time, and I feel like we've lost that medium budget type of film that, Simon, you call them like your hangover films, but I feel like these are the types of films, and comedy included. Like, comedy is so dead when it comes to the cinema, that have been lost because these types of films now go on Netflix, or they turn into like 8-part series that could have been 90-minute films, if we're being honest. So there's also that. So like, and it's something that I've been thinking about, because I want to do like this long piece on finding solutions ultimately. But to me, like, the whole situation breaks down on every stage of the process. It's marketing is wrong, like studio marketing is wrong, distribution is wrong, exhibition is wrong, like nothing is quite working. And I see it, and I see other industries that used to really struggle and now are doing quite well. So like, I came across this random research recently around malls and how malls are back for Gen Z in America. Like, malls used to be dead, but Gen Z have found malls now, and they're doing so well because Gen Z still wants to hang out at IRL. Like, I don't think they want to be online all the time, even though we claim them to be like digital natives. I think they still want to connect and experience things together. So how, like, what can we learn from retail? What can we learn from malls? Like, how did they bring, Gen Z back? So you just have to rethink the whole experience, from being at home to how do you actually motivate someone to get out of home and get to you want to call it cinema, you want to call it movie theater, whatever the right term is.
I think the problem is, or sorry, not the problem, man. I've been thinking about this while we've been talking about how I phrase this in the right way, because I think there's ways in which this could come across wrong, because I don't want to say that cinema is too expensive, because I think it is for some people. Like, I admit, like, going to, like, it's more expensive for me to go to the Picture House in Finsbury Park than it is if I just go out to Stratford and go to the View. But the problem, or the issue is that it will always be more expensive than streaming. And so how do you as a cinema or a studio, do you combat that? Because, I can go to the cinema for, let's say, when if I get a ticket that's full price at Finsbury Park, if I get food, that's maybe like £25, £26, £27 altogether. and then tube fare there and back, it's probably like 30 quid. Or I could stay here and I pay for my Netflix subscription, which is like $9.99 for the month. And then you have, as you say, you have Simon, you have like swathes of stuff, or like Now TV or something like that. There's an interesting thing from a financial perspective of how do you get people back? Because also there's a cost of living crisis, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of people who can't even afford their heating bill. So how are they going to be able to splurge on the fact that they want to go out and have a bit of escapism? And it's like, well, fuck, like, do I go to the cinema once a month, or do I pay for Netflix? Because essentially it's the same price.
Yeah, I think you almost have to take that out of the equation, in my opinion, and like focus on the people that can afford to, and they're choosing not to. And how do you move those?
I disagree,
people?
though. I don't think that's fair, because I think cinema's supposed to be for everyone. I don't think
Well,
you'd meet a director
depends.
who wouldn't say.
Yeah,
I
of course.
I think cinema's like, you know, like especially for like young, like you talk to young and up and coming directors. I think it's unfair to say that, because like, you know, it should be for everybody. It shouldn't be kind of prohibitively expensive.
It's not, though. That I think that's what I'm getting at, and I think it's because we're making the wrong assumption that you're trading a movie at home for a movie at the cinema. And to me, what's lacking right now is that the movie-going experience doesn't offer anything more than watching a movie. To me, it should offer community, should offer something else that you can actually get at home on your own. So it's how you phrase it in a way that actually is worth the time and the money on your end. Because people may say, oh, it's too expensive, but then they go to Sephora and they spend £50 on a cream because it's been sold to them that they actually need it when they don't. So a lot of it is not that you can't actually afford it, is that you've been told that you're supposed to be going to the cinema only when there's an IMAX movie out or something along those lines. So to me, a lot of it is about positioning and rethinking about the physical space of cinemas and how can they provide more than just a big screen, because it shouldn't be just that.
I think pricing could definitely be better.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's certain points where
the value as well.
They should be pricing, you know, in times of the day to try and get people in, which I think people have, you know, it seems to me exhibitors are still pretty unsophisticated when thinking about that. I mean, I went once to an independent screen to try and get them to open the screening up so I could do lectures from 9 a.m. And literally they couldn't wrap their head around it. I said, I'm going to bring 120 students who are all going to want coffee. They're all going to want something to eat. And I'm going to do it at 9 o'clock in the morning when nobody else is going to be there. And they wouldn't give me, they said, no, it's got to be the corporate rate. And I said, no, just give me a massive discount and you'll have all this extra ancillary money. You know what I mean? And it'll be lively. But they just couldn't see it. It's almost as if they see these things as corporate venues rather than cinemas. Or corporate venues first rather than cinemas.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think I kind of think there's a bit of both of what you're both saying, because I do think that there is a big problem of seeing films as content. I have this phrase, it's like cinema, not content. You know what I mean? And I put that on everything that I post, or a lot of stuff that I post, where to kind of reassert that medium specificity. It's not just, you know, part of your, I don't know, TikTok stream. It's something,
but
you know,
of
itself.
If you don't reduce the amount of material people have at their disposal, how are you ever going to make it special again? Because like if you think about the so-called golden age of cinema, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, when it was all about linear TV and you'd sit down and you'd perhaps wait all week for the show you were excited to watch, and then you had your fix, and then you had to wait another week and then the idea of going to the cinema was like an exciting prospect. Whereas now people sit down, they eat their dinner on their knee, and they're watching, like, they're actually sort of choosing what they're going to hate least to watch. They're just like, oh, what are we going to put on? It's almost like a chore, and it's completely reframed the relationship with the content, which your hated word, you know, which is what it's become. It's just a sort of a sausage factory of absolute, well, most of it's pure guff. And so it's like, how do you make it special again and make people value it and make it rare, more rarefied somehow, without obviously making it exclusively priced?
I think this is where you have to think of the two types of cinemas that are still doing quite well. So you have the Prince Charles of the world, that you have the cult movies, incredible programming, film club, quote-alongs, like sing-alongs, and they have very affordable screenings because they're a grassroots community effort. And then you have I think that's what you're referring to, Sai, like the everymans, where actually like they did so well last year. They reported like a 20% increase in revenue, where they offer the experience, like great seats, great food, a proper night out. And this is for people that can actually afford cinema. But I think there are cinemas like Prince Charles or the Garden Cinema has like £5 or like £4 screenings that I feel like they're probably not advertised enough, but they come from truly grassroots efforts. I feel like we need to elevate more of those for sure, because I do think people crave community these days.
That's where the renaissance can come, I think.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at some of the reporting on generally on kind of like I forget where we are now, Gen Z kind of experience, you know, that sort of sense of there is a kind of pushback about being online all the time. Now, the problem is, and you guys all experience it just as much as I do, however much you want to cultivate your own cultural experience and take control of that, there is a million, you know, tech bros on the other side trying to get you addicted to whatever social media that that you've got on your phone. So it's so easy to slip into that. Oh, suddenly I've just lost an hour, and like what you're saying there,
you've lost an hour of emotional bandwidth.
Exactly. Or you sit down and it's easier to just put on a series that actually is kind of inoffensive and easy to watch, and you don't need to think about it so much. Exactly. I mean, did you guys read that article in the New York Times where now they are actually making stuff which is designed to be played on background? You know, and that's the thing that we're up against in terms of the production of content. You know,
yeah, Spotify is doing something similar with AI lo-fi music, because lo-fi background noise, it's so back, and it worries me. But like Dario, I want to quickly move to you in terms of solutions. Like, I know you spend a lot of time thinking about it, and I'm sure like there's not like a one answer, but in your head, if you had a magic wand, like what would you change in the industry to bring people back to the cinema?
Well, I think there has to be a serious consideration to going back to some kind of production distribution window, or being very, very, very strict on what constitutes a film and what doesn't. Now, you know, we can have philosophical arguments about that, but in terms of the industry, it's like, this is a film because it's been released for this amount of time in this many cinemas. I think that's kind of like a starting point. I think that there has to be some kind of model figured out, and again, I don't have the solution to this, where the film as the cultural artifact that you're engaging with supersedes things that are going to make the exhibitors money, like food and like 20 minutes of trailers. There's nothing worse than that, right? I don't know. I mean, those kinds of things are really, really important in terms of the mainstream commercial industry. Because what's really important is that I think I've been accused in the past of being anti-mainstream. I'm not anti-mainstream, but mainstream needs to be good, because then art house and independent will get funding because mainstream is working. That's a big problem. If mainstream is crap, I mean, I know there are people who want the whole thing burnt down and almost kind of like a grassroots level, you know, free for all. I mean, and maybe there's some value in sort of thinking about it that way. But yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, it's just so difficult because I think a lot of this is wider cultural issues. It's about education. You know, I just did an episode for my other podcast where we were talking about behavior and, you know, the social contract, social spaces where people don't give a fuck about how they're disturbing somebody else. You know, It's no fun getting into an argument, which I've done many a time, about people with their phones or talking. You know what I mean? It's like saying things like, well, you've paid 20 quid to be here. Why are you talking, you idiot? You know?
We need more shaming people. We need to shame people more.
Yeah, I think so. But it needs to be there needs to be an allowance of shaming as well. Like, I think people should, you know, they have a solidarity of kick them out, like they're doing at comedy shows now. They're actually taking control of that. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, Simon, any lasting thoughts on
If
solutions?
I had-
What you would rethink?
If I had loads of money to throw at it, I would start a new genre of cinema and it'd be all live. Because I think you could make a whole... So that ticks my rarefication box. It makes something unique. If you can make it good, you could have all the cinemas packed out because you've got to be there to experience it live at the same time as everyone else. So making a kind of an appointment to watch. And I think everyone is excited to see people take risks, like see famous actors, in the moment. Can they pull it off? Will they fuck up? Will the set break? Will there be technical problems? I think that could be a really exciting approach. And then I think people would watch the recordings of the live cinema shoots because you're kind of like willing people on when they're taking risks like that, and you're kind of able to see how they did it and where it went wrong and where it went right. And I think more emotion also comes across when you're like you've got to do something in one take. I think it's always slightly more exciting, and
That's
humans can detect that in the performances of others when they know they're on the hook to get it right.
Aren't you just describing theatre though?
Yeah,
What's the
pretty
difference?
much. But I think, that's exactly what it is, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. But delivered through cinema in a cinematic production treatment.
It could
So
also
it's
be,
basically what it is.
it could also be similar to your point, some sort of appointment viewing in the context of the new James Bond premieres at the same time across the world. So like you literally have to watch it at a specific time.
Well, they used to do that with TV though, right? Like I remember that when Lost finished, there was a whole thing of like everybody around. I remember them releasing like, this is the time for everybody around the world to get up because it's going to be on your channel at this time, and everyone's going to watch it at the same time. We just don't do that.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to have Netflix as my client for a few years ago, and that was like peak Stranger Things around that time. And I remember they were saying that actually our number one issue and how we're struggling right now, because I was like, you don't have any problems, you're doing so well, why are you coming to me? They were like, we're actually struggling, we want the appointment viewing experience that HBO has, because our model by default doesn't offer that. And I feel like this is why they've tried in recent years to post episodes weekly. I think they did it for, what was it? Was it not Squid Games? Was it the reality show of Squid Game? I think they've tried with reality TV.
The Squid Game reality show, yeah.
Yeah, just so they can prolong the conversation afterwards, because they found that people, watched a show in 2 days, and then the window of the conversation was not as lasting as the White Lotus and what HBO does so well.
I think Netflix have made a rod for their own back in that regard, though, because we live in a world now where that is a thing where like TV shows get released all the time. So actually, from a television perspective, a TV show has to be good enough for you to want to come back every week and not just be like, oh, fuck, I'll just wait until they're all out and then I'll watch it all at once. Because you can do that now, right? Like, I'm not necessarily enjoying White Lotus. So there's a world where I just go, actually, you know what? I'll wait like 3 weeks and then I can watch them all at once. And Netflix have kind of hamstrung themselves because that's how it is.
Yeah.
I would also say, like, one of the things I would certainly do away with is I really hate the whole it releases in cinemas and then in 3 weeks it's on Netflix or it's on the streaming service. Like, I just don't remember they did that with what was it, The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon. Not to call out Scorsese in any way, but like I just think there's something, I think as you're saying, Dario, like this broadcast release window, like there's something to be said for like it's in the cinema for a while, and then if you miss it, like you're not going to see it for like 6 months until the DVD comes out or releases on streaming. There's a thing now where it automatically goes there.
Yeah.
In some cases maybe, but it just being readily available within 2 or 3 weeks.
I think that they're missing a trick with repertory screenings as well. Do you remember when COVID was happening, or just after, when we were allowed back out, and there was no content there were no films. Stop saying that. There were no films that were new to. So like Jaws and E.T. were coming back, and people were like going to. It's like we need to kind of remember that repertory cinema is a thing. It's not just a kind of London centric, thing for cinephiles. It actually should be made more widely popular.
I have no idea why this is not happening. Like I have this, like, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well. But every single summer, like in London, you have the open air cinemas, and they play the same 5 movies again and again. Like the Greatest Showman, Notting Hill, and Romeo and Juliet. Like it's the same 5 movies, and they sell out every single year. Like it's impossible to find a single seat for these films because again they provide an experience, open air, like bring your beer, like it's a whole thing. But I don't know why even multiplexes like View or Odeon don't do this more often.
I don't know. I don't understand.
It's probably to do with
it's
complex rights negotiations.
That's what
it's a money thing. Yeah,
exactly. And plus, the as we know, the corporate culture is about the next new thing. They don't want you going back to something that's not going to make them any money.
But then you look at anniversaries and they do so well. Well, if it's Nolan, I'm guessing. But okay, that was quite hopeful. Thank you. Gives me a lot to chew on. Let's move on to AI because there's just a lot to talk about. And I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible. But Dario, you've recently created this video essay called "Do You Want to Hear It Talk?" Which explores how speaking machines are represented in science fiction cinema. I'd love for us to play the first few minutes for our listeners. And I think, Sai, you're going to do your magic and you're going to play that in right now, which we're not going to do for video. Unless you want me to. I can do that.
I reckon do it and then we can...
Okay. Let me
talk
just...
off the back of it.
Okay, awesome. Let me just share my screen then. Feels like I'm working. Hello, can you see my screen?
Yep. No, don't say that.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just gonna play it now. I'm gonna play the whole thing, and then we can obviously cut it if we want. Keep it shorter.
Do you want to hear it talk?
Welcome, students. This is session 24 of the Human-AI Relations Orientation Program. The focus of the session will be machine voice representation and discourses of human anxiety in the period of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. During this period, fabricated audio-visual stories, or films as they were known, defined the ways in which humans understood their relationships with thinking and speaking machines. As we have seen in previous sessions, the visual imagery of robots, cyborgs, and computers represented the possibilities and anxieties that humans projected onto technology.
To ensure your future, some freedoms must be surrendered.
But sound, and particularly the synthesized voice, was just as important as the image in applying narratological, thematic, and psychological properties to machines.
Don't you understand?
This is why you created us.
The vocality of cybernetic intelligence was deployed symbolically in a wide array of storytelling contexts.
Oh, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
And using many different forms of acoustic resonance.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Cold rationality signified emotionless detachment.
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
But robot speech could also portray compliant, agreeable functionality.
Frank, I've reviewed your medical records. Are you finding your episodes of disorientation increasing in frequency?
What the hell are you?
I'm a robot, Frank.
I'm talking to you! Drop it!
And often, the voice served to amplify a mechanistic authority.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Speaking machines were sometimes merely a character in futuristic spectacles.
Welcome to Altair 4, gentlemen. I am to transport you to the residence. If you do not speak English, I am at your disposal with 187 other languages along with their various dialects and sub-tongues.
And in many elaborate space fantasies, humanistic personality traits were shaped through sonic communication.
What makes you think there are settlements over there? Don't get technical with me.
How such technology worked was never important. These characters served to flesh out stories set in galaxies far, far away.
Go that way. You'll be malfunctioning within a day, you nearsighted scrap pile.
But more important for our analysis were the films that served as allegories for the human anxiety related to technological development.
Hello. Are you still playing a game?
Of course, I should reach DEFCON 1 and launch my missiles in 28 hours.
Representations of intelligent machines fulfilled the role of the evil other, and often through a process of logical determinism, they sought the replacement, enslavement, or annihilation of human beings.
Is this a game, or is it real?
What's the difference?
Oh, wow.
Wow. Well, I mean, where do I start? Perhaps you can walk us through it and talk a bit about your intention behind making it, the genesis of it.
Sure. I made a version of this way back in about 2020, I think. It was probably, COVID era, sort of 2021. I took it to a conference in Bucharest, of all places. And it was just a 20-minute kind of video with the clips, and it didn't have this character that you can see there. It was just my voiceover, so it was more of a traditional video essay. And I was interested in the science fiction element of it and talking machines and how that kind of relates to the idea of consciousness. I'm really fascinated with the idea of how we have a consciousness and then that constructs language, and then how we speak, and we do that all automatically. Even having this conversation here, how do we really do that? It's just crazy. So then when you start to think about what machines are doing when they're constructing language, and how that then in science fiction relates to different types of narratives and discourses, as it says there about annihilating humans, or with the robot nurse helping out, all these kind of things about futurism and technology and all that. But then when the sort of AI explosion happened, I got sort of really interested in the early text to video technology and how terrible it was. And even to this day, the big problem, well, there's many of them, but one of the sort of fundamental issues in sort of creating characters is lip syncing. So having characters that speak and having the mouth move in a way that doesn't look ridiculous, right? So I wanted to make this video and try and make a character that was, the conceit is this is a teacher from the future, like 100 years from now, who is teaching humans about how to get on with machines, basically, and using clips from the past to kind of educate. And I wanted a character, you can see that it's almost kind of like a digital face. And that was the one character when I was using a specific AI program that seemed to keep cropping up, that kind of face, when I was using it a specific way. So this was before it's easier now to have a stable character that moves from scene to scene. It was really difficult when I first started. And I managed to capture this one and then sync it to the voice that you heard, which is also synthesized. And the first version of that was really super robotic because the first synthesized voices just sounded really, really bad. But that was the sort of second iteration through this company called 11 Labs. And I really like her voice because it's slightly like ironic, like she's taking the piss a little bit, you know what I mean? But it has the spaces and it has the breath. So it does sound a lot more human. So I decided then I wanted to attach these clips together and create a kind of almost a sort of lecture or lesson from the future. And the rest of the film, it's quite long. It's about 35 minutes. There are like 4 different sections. So I look at sort of 4 different ways in which the voice is as I said, sort of defined as this through different types of discourses in science fiction. And then I end with the final film I kind of look at is Her, that becomes so that the film with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson as the voice, because obviously there was all of that story about her voice being used against her will, and it kind of beautifully, that story came out just as I was finishing the movie, and it provided a kind of denouement that I could use, and then kind of like pretend that the next lesson was coming next week, and sort of allude to futuristic things that were going to happen, which all good sci-fi, tries to do without explaining itself too much.
Yeah. I'm sensing an irony in choosing an AI voice to be the narrator of the film. I wonder why you decided to do that.
You mean rather than a voiceover artist?
As in yourself, like you could have been the narrator, for example.
Well, I cloned my own voice, but I just didn't like the way it sounded, to be honest with you. And but one of the sections is about the gendering of the voice, because there's a lot being written about Siri and Alexa, and the default is always this sort of soft North American kind of very compliant type female accent. So there's a lot of kind of feminist critique of that. And I wanted to have that in there, so then I could I could kind of answer that question in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of the clips in that teaser there are about how people at the time thought the future would sound. You know, what's the future now? But for us today, the future is just hyperrealism. So how do you sort of suggest something futuristic in some film that you're making now, if it's just going to be like the most pristine version of reality? Like, how do you kind of portray the future?
Yeah, I mean, that's the difficult thing. It's kind of, we've reached a point where it's kind of pointless, because a lot of the narratives that we've seen in science fiction in the 20th century have kind of caught up. We've kind of caught up with them. This is why I think sci-fi is crap these days, because the narratives have been realized in many ways. There's that, I don't know if you guys have seen, there's that timeline which shows where we are in relationship to all of the science fiction movies and when they were set,
We've recently had Blade Runner, haven't we?
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that in the last couple of years. We've had, Blade Runner was set in like 2020 something or other like that, with flying cars and androids and people living on different planets.
Yeah,
I think
it's amazing.
It's very good at predicting the future in some ways, and perhaps now it's that, as you said, 'cause in the 60s you could just put tin foil on everything and it looked like the future. It looked like something that goes into space, and now it's like, it's very.
But now, I think what we're realizing is actually that science fiction is actually more about a question of who we are as humans, as much as what technology is going to do. And I mean, Mickey 17 is a prime example of that. You know what I mean? It's about a human being who's kind of, trying to sort of reconcile the idea of how he defined himself as human has been completely taken apart by this death and resurrection type process, right? But like, this is the kind of science fiction we get, which are not really trying to do that thing of prognosticating what the future is going to look like. And I think with my film, I didn't want to worry about this is going to look like, because we're not going to have screens in the future, are we? It's going to be some hologram or some implant. We're not going to interface like this in 100 years' time. Cinema won't exist at all in the same way, right? So, in some senses, it's beholden to that clunkiness, which is fine, because we recognize those tropes, of kind of science fiction that kind of looks sort of retro-futuristic rather than because we can't imagine what 100 years is going to look like. We just can't. We base it on what we can see, what we can see around us today, tweaked a little bit.
And also, perhaps there's less. Sorry, Sophie.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say perhaps there was a lot more of an optimistic view of what a sci-fi future looked like in the 50s and 60s and 70s, whereas now it feels a bit more dystopian, or maybe that's just me. Or
well, I don't know. I think I think there's dystopians all over the place. Dystopians are everywhere from all the time.
Or are we just as naive as people? Like, we are probably just as naive as people in the 70s. We're just exposed to something differently, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, everybody says, God, can you believe that? Like, they thought it'd be like in the 70s, they thought it'd be like this. In 100 years' time, all of our great-grandchildren will be saying the same thing. Like, oh, can you believe? Like, they'll be looking at Mickey 17 and saying, God, can you believe that like 100 years ago they thought that we'd be like flying to different planets because, Earth would be gone and all that kind of shit.
I thought we'd be living in the Rocky Horror Show by now. It still hasn't come.
Yeah. But it's interesting though that the main sort of trope that the film is about is the idea of speaking to a machine that speaks back is a pervasive trope throughout most of science fiction, right? And now we are here. It's arrived. You can go on now, fire up ChatGPT and speak to it as if it were a human being. And it's never going to get any worse than it is now. You've got to remember that. Everything that, all technologies, when we're interfacing with them, when we're using them, they are their worst versions of what they're ever going to be, always, which is a really weird paradox if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, in your essay where you expand on this work, you talk about this moment in, is it War Games from 1983, where you have you have Matthew Broderick's character trying to explain that the AI doesn't just, play games, but it learns how to learn, which was so interesting. It gets better each time. So you almost you managed to connect this exact thing to how filmmaking is traditionally learned through hands-on experience.
Yeah.
But do you think that there are aspects of filmmaking that require this human learning process that AI might never be able to replicate? Or yeah, as you said, is it just a matter of time before AI can learn all the skills that make a filmmaker or a great one?
I think we're way, way, way away from that. I mean, there's the fundamental kind of physical thing, So let's say let's say we get to a point maybe in 10, 20, 50 years time where a computer can literally simulate photorealistic moving images in any way, shape, or form, right? Which is so far away. That then becomes the question of whether the computer is going to be able to produce anything in the context of humans wanting to watch it, however far away that is. What's happening right now is that certain elements of the pipeline of film production are being made more efficient or being overtaken, or visual effects is one of the obvious ones. We had that thing about, what's it called? The brutalist and the sound element. So sound correction. I mean, I use Adobe Podcast to upgrade the audio for the podcast and stuff like that. So these things are coming in different stages of the workflow, right? The speech or text to video programs still only produce about 10 seconds worth before they start going haywire. So this is why you get these very specific type of AI films, which are sort of quick cuts between 4 and 6 seconds. And that lends itself. What does that lend itself to? Music videos, advertising, voiceover. So again, no speaking characters. So that's where we kind of are right now. So you can make some interesting kind of short films and have voiceovers and not worry about lip syncing. But we're so far away from the idea that a computer could create a feature film. And you've got to remember, we're nowhere near what's known as the singularity. All of these things are still reliant on humans inputting certain prompts in the right order, in the right way, and then stitching it all together using other programs like Premiere Pro and After Effects and all of that kind of stuff. So it's, we are a long way from that problem occurring, I think.
Good. That's good to know. Well, on the flip side, I know you're crediting yourself as, I think you say created by, as opposed to calling yourself the director or the filmmaker of, the video essay. And that made me wonder, it's sort of a adjacent question in terms of what will the film credits look like in, 10, 20 years from now? Is it the case where you must have a threshold of sorts, or human input to be able to tell, oh yeah, this is human enough to be able to call this person an animator? But if they've used a bit of runway or Mid-Journey on the side, that's also fine. I wonder how this is going to develop in the film industry, because as you said, I mean, back in the day, you were not allowed to use Photoshop. That was unethical, and now everyone is using Photoshop. So it's how these norms are going to change. It's interesting.
Again, I think they are just going to change. I can't foresee what that's going to look like. I mean, we've had this argument before in terms of cinematography. So I don't know, there's the big controversy against Life of Pi, when Life of Pi won Best Cinematography, and there was no very little in-camera cinematography actually done on that movie. It was a video project, and that's a video effects project in that sense. So what is cinematography in that regard. And what I mean, again, it's interesting because if you watch again sort of AI films as they are now, and there's you can see these videos of cinematographers commenting on them and saying, well, the light's all wrong there, the shadow is wrong there, and and all these kinds of things. Then other people saying, wow, this is amazing. This is so again, maybe that same problem that we talked about in terms of the flattening of our ability to understand complex form is again one of the kind of problems that is going to be an outcome of AI in the near future. Again, these things I think will always be iterative. They'll always get solved and made better over time. And just to say as well, I'm very ambivalent. I didn't make this movie because I'm an advocate of AI. Everything that I'm making something at the moment, or I'm preparing to make something on the uncanny valley, which is very much about this idea of characters who just, they're supposed to be human. They're supposed to engage our emotions on an empathetic human level, but they can't because they just look weird, right? So are we going to now have a generation of films that kind of sit within the uncanny valley in the same way that, say, something like Polar Express did, if you remember that film, where everybody was kind of like, this just looks weird.
It does. Well, on the topic of ambivalence, though, you've been screening this to a few universities recently. So I was quite curious about the response from students who are, entering traditional filmmaking. I'm sure you were met with strong opinions, potentially. What were
I mean, and rightly so, rightly so. I mean, I think that there is if I'm going to boil it down, there's sort of three strands of response, which is, this like curiosity, this is really interesting, this is really exciting. I'm not politically one way or the other, but I'm open to kind of realizing that this is going to have an effect on my life, career, whatever. Then there are the kind of advocates who are like, yeah, I'm going to use whatever it takes for me to get ahead in my chosen career. If I want to be a cinematographer or I want to be an editor, I'm going to have to know and understand how to use these technologies. And then there's the absolute, rejectors, that this is terrible, this is not art, this is plagiarism, it's destroying the environment, or, all of those kinds of arguments. It props up the kind of techno-capitalism that's destroying the world anyway. All of those things, which are valid arguments. I mean, my response to that, or my conversation was that is AI why is AI the thing that you're blaming for that? It's everywhere. It's mobile phones, it's cars, it's long haul flights, it's all kinds of technology is destroying the world. And yeah, maybe AI is pushing it further than we want any of that to go. But again, I go back to that sense. It's not, AI is not the fault. It is not the problem per se. It's how it's used, how it's developed, what it's put to. I mean, what if AI cures cancer tomorrow? It's kind of like, is it terrible? You know what I mean? It can, like any technology, it depends on the context and the application, I think, as much as anything else, which at this point is problematic still, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Can I get your quick take on the most hopeful scenario and the most doomery scenario when it comes to, and I know, like, when it comes to AI, you have AGI, you have generative AI. I think we're talking in the context of the creative fields. In your view, from the conversations you've been having, is there actually a positive scenario coming out of this potentially, or is it all like doom and gloom environment?
It's tricky because it's about adaptation.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, unless we're gonna, we literally somehow get to a point politically where techno-capitalism is challenged, in some way, and that's on a global level, obviously, because if, like, say for example, if you ban it in the UK, then everybody will just leave, you know what I mean, and go and do it elsewhere. So, and I hate to be kind of like just sort of get with the program. It's going to happen whether you like it or not, kind of attitude. But I think that if we can put enough pressure that it's regulated in the right ways and it's applied in ways that are socially useful, that's what we can hope for. The problem, again, what we have is the people who create this and their political agendas. That's the issue more than the technology, itself. It's like, like anything, gunpowder, nuclear bombs. The technology creates amazing stuff, but it can kill us all as well. You know what I mean? So it's
Absolutely.
down to us to kind of define how we use it, how we regulate it,
Yeah.
how it changes us as humans.
So now that you're done with it, what are you working on next? Are you working on anything similar? Are you gonna try AI in different ways?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. Well, this video essay about the uncanny valley is
Oh,
taking
you
That's
haven't
gonna-
done. Okay.
That's going to be another video essay that I'm gonna focus on after this one, which is going to sort of talk about that sort of sense of what does it mean to be human, but sort of in an embodied form.
Yes.
And how far are we away from getting photorealistic images, and what impact could that have, say, on things like image rights? Like I wrote this essay a while back now on Substack, which was about Tom Cruise is going to start de-aging very slowly, and he's going to live forever. It's going to be the first immortal movie star. After this, and maybe after Mission Impossible, he'll start to slowly de-age. We'll never
can
see him
see it.
again, and you know what I mean. He'll just end up living forever.
That is, I've been meaning to do a deep dive on the curious case of Tom Cruise because I mean it's quite something.
Yeah, I mean that essay is the one that sort of underpins this. What I'm gonna do in the video essay.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to watching it. Sai, Ben, any final questions for Dario? I know we've kept him for way too long.
No, it's all right. It's all good.
When you mentioned earlier about AI creating films and then people commenting that the shadows weren't correct and stuff, it just made me think of how many films do have poor lighting, but they survive because the story's brilliant and the emotions transfer.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter about that stuff in the end. It's about the message of the film and how that comes across.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, maybe from an industrial standpoint, what's more problematic is that now online non-high-end production has started to or non-high-end content has started to overtake high-end production. So now people are watching more YouTube videos of people going about their everyday life in whatever shape or form that is, than they're watching TV or film. That's now switched over. So, maybe the very notion of entertainment is going to change completely. And maybe that's because of what's going on in with AI in films and in television. People are like, you know what? I just want to communicate with another human being or watch another human being being human. And that's now going to be our next, cycle of entertainment.
Yeah, and for me, that's the most difficult issue where I just don't see how AI films and AI cinema can become the default, because I'm thinking of my favorite film, like for some reason Moonlight came to mind, or like 12 Angry Men, where these films have moved me so much. But the reason they have is because I know there were people that came up with a story, or like this came from someone's brain, and I was able to relate to that experience, or like how they were able to tackle like things like racism and prejudice. So if you almost know the magic trick, and if you know how the society is made, if you know that AI is creating those films, I just don't know if they're gonna have the same emotional impact, because even though they're technically perfect, or they deliver complexity, if they manage to do that, and I'm assuming they will be able to do that eventually, because I know there's not someone, actually someone human behind the scene, I don't think I will be able to relate to the movie to the same extent. And maybe I'm proven wrong. I'm probably not going to be alive by the time that happens. But for me, that's what's missing. This is why we cry. This is why we laugh, because we connect with the humans behind.
But you're presupposing that you're going to be told that.
I'm assuming I will.
But we didn't know about what was happening with the Brutalist until it was kind of given away.
Yes.
So unless again this could be a regulatory question for politicians or for the industry, whatever is, do you have to put some kind of caveat? Is there going to be another 10 minutes of titles at the end? You know what I mean? Of credits at the end of the movie saying this bit was AI, this bit was human, as you said, or not?
But all of cinema is not what it purports to be. All of it's makeup and lenses and everything. No one's gonna give a shit as long as it's great fun and a great story.
It's just a different tool, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
it's like going from film to digital. You know, it's just, and I guess that's the crux of it, right? Is like, it's what conversation are you having? Are you thinking AI is going to take over cinema, or are actually we going to get some? Is AI going to allow people who wouldn't be able to? Like, I always think of I could never draw the things that Guillermo del Toro draws and then makes into these amazing creatures.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I couldn't have these ideas that you can then use AI to help bring that to life. I mean, it just depends on how much of the creative process you hand over to it. And also, as you said, Dario, we're still in a world where no matter what you do, someone still has to plug it in, right? You still have to feed these drawings into the computer so it knows what to draw from. And what to take inspiration from. AI is amazing, but it just gets rid of the originality. It doesn't, like, it's or at least right now, a computer is not going to come up with an original quote unquote idea, because it'll always be rooted in well, what's the back catalogue of things it has to draw from?
What's it been trained on, basically?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean,
what's it been trained to do? Yeah, it becomes like a paint by numbers thing.
Those two arguments, the argument about it being trained on people's work without their permission, and the environmental thing, are the two arguments I have the most kind of not sympathy, but I'm in tune with. It's kind of like, this is problematic. I mean, there has been the decisions in European court where it's actually been it's been decided that this isn't it doesn't come under the remit of plagiarism, which I'm sure would be countered by those artists and writers who've had their work kind of trained on in that sense. But we're at the point now where AIs are training other AIs, so it's just
exactly. It's
that's
like, what's the difference between a filmmaker like Steven Soderbergh watching his heroes' films and then taking inspiration from that to make what he's making. That's all we do as humans, isn't it? We just watch what's gone before and then do our spin on it.
I was just about to say, what's the difference between training and inspiration? And that's probably another 2 hours worth of a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's funny. What's funny as well is I get that impression that when I see people really digging, really slagging off AI on the grounds of, it couldn't do what a human artist can do. There's a kind of sense that everybody thinks they're Michelangelo. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, maybe you're not as great as, most human art is pretty banal,
Yeah, the thing that always gets me is when I was a kid, I used to think, when all this technology becomes democratized and cheaper so anyone can access it and make stuff, we'll have so much amazing content everywhere. And it's not the case at all. I thought that we'd have way more like guerrilla filmmaking, people shooting stuff on iPhones, and like I thought the Blair Witch Project was like the beginning of this whole revolution of like underground cinema, and it never really transpired. And it's because making really good films is bloody difficult to bring it all together, and takes a huge amount of human endeavor to do it still.
Yeah. Well, what I'm sure of is that it will be able to do a fantastic job in the genre of like Transformers and Electric State, like all of this
by ChatGPT.
I can totally see AI, turning out these films. I don't know the timeline.
You'll be able to choose those films by what mood you're in. You're like, I'm after a bit of a hangover, but a little bit of comedy, no peril though, feeling a bit sick, and then just press go. It'll turn you out a Michael
Generate
Bay
in real time.
Yeah. With the Electric State, that's a corporate thing though as well. It's a really interesting book. The Stalinhag work is just like amazing, and then they turn it into this thing that I haven't seen it, but I've read that people think it's terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know whether AI was involved at all with that. Maybe it's just humans replicating stuff in a bad way.
Yeah, they need to stop giving money to the Russo brothers. Something is not quite working there. Or maybe they're AI, or they've been AI all along, and we never knew. Who knows? Well, awesome. We covered so much ground. And Dario, oh my God, thank you so much. It's 9 p.m., so thank you so much for taking all this time to talk to us. Where can people find your work? Go to Plug City. I will make sure that all the links that you mentioned are in our show notes. But
so my Substack, it's got various sections in it, but the main one is called Contrawise. But I have the Cinematologist podcast and my sort of video one I've just started, which you were obviously, Sophie, you were the first person on, is called Cinema Body, Cinema Mind, and this is kind of more about cinema in a holistic sense, so going to the cinema as much as films themselves. This film is nearly finished now, so I'm just trying to get it over the line, and then as soon as that's ready, I'll probably release it on Substack as a whole.
Oh, amazing! I'm looking for, well, reach out to me and I will make sure to just spread the word.
Thank you.
I feel, because I know Ben and Simon will have to be back with a final scene, and I was thinking maybe we need to do a Gene Hackman film. What do you guys think?
Up for it.
Yeah, I'm up for Gene Hackman, yeah.
Yeah, wow. I don't know if Dario have any recommendations, or like if you have any favorite Hackman final scene, but if not,
well,
we can
off the top of my head, the end of the conversation is the best
it's so
one.
Good. Oh, it has a great final scene. Yeah.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we can rewatch and regroup, because I was between The Conversation and Unforgiven, but I mean, I'm in a Gene Hackman marathon at the moment, so I'm going through some of his best films. I just watched Mississippi Burning and I'm still aching, so yeah, it's gonna be a long one. Well, if you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and yeah, we will hopefully be back in a couple of weeks. Think so, maybe. But yeah, until then, thanks for listening to that final scene.
See ya.
Bye.